Greetings, my fellow free will sovereign thinkers. LL3 to do this podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date is Friday, April 6th, 2018. If I'm correct, this is the 24th anniversary of the 100-day Holocaust in Rwanda. Genocide, democide, where 800,000 people were slaughtered by the hands of governmental thugs. And most of them were slaughtered with machetes. Thanks to victim disarmament programs, the period of time, that mission was fulfilled. I know there's talk about discussion that happened in the city of Fort Lauderdale's chambers about shutting down the gun show in the heart of Fort Lauderdale to make our cities and parks safer. Well, with all due respect, we've been living in a dangerous world since the beginning of time. It will achieve nothing. To the past is today's greatest teacher. When were you jugheads out there, without part of the herd conformity, without any merit, can comprehend what's like this historic, horrific event that occurred 24 years ago on this day? Well, to be very frank, if you're still going to believe leaving all your security in the hands of the government, expect blowback. Expect to get your rear end rammed so hard that it will ache for a long period of time, including your children and grandchildren, neighbors, etc. Well, I'm not going to be talking about that. Just had to let that off my chest. However, there's a couple things I'm going to be addressing. Still on my cell phone. So I'm just been busy, been working a lot. Got to make a living as well. But you know what? That's part of life. But I still want to do much of this as I can. Thank you for your patience. Deeply appreciate it. And this one here came from the Land Destroyer Report, written by Tony Carlucci from the New Eastern Outlook. You should go to that website, man. Very good stuff. Land Destroyer and New Eastern Outlook has a lot of merit, especially on imperialism in Asia. This one's here. Washington and the Riyadh terror enterprise. For decades, the United States and its NATO allies have helped Saudi Arabia export methods of political indoctrination known as Wahhabism to radicalize individuals and swell the ranks of mercenary forces to use to wage proxy wars abroad and manipulate Western populations at home. Yeah, I'm talking about human rights. Okay, we'll do one on Cuba and embargo no on human rights violations, but Saudi Arabia, with this pat on the head, like, good boys, we're so proud of you. Double standards as we speak. What began as a means for the House of Saud itself to establish, expand, and eventually consolidate political power on the Arabian Peninsula in the 18th century has become finally home to of geopolitical power integrated into Washington's foreign policy. A remarkable admission was recently made in the pages of the Washington Post, an article titled "Saudi Prince Denies Kirchner is in His Pocket." This article will quote Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed of Salman, stating, emphasis added, ask about the Saudi-funded spread of Wahhabism and Austrian faith that is dominant in the kingdom, and that some have accused of being source of global terrorism. Mohammed said that investment in mosque and madrasas overseas were rooted in the Cold War when allies asked Saudi Arabia to use resources to prevent inroads in Muslim countries by the Soviet Union. Successive Saudi government lost track of the effort and said, and now we have to get it all back. Funding now comes largely from Saudi-based foundations, he said, rather than from the government. While an article claims successive Saudi governments lost track of the effort, and that finding is now provided by Saudi-based foundations. This is not true. There are no successive governments in Saudi Arabia. The nation, since its founding, had been run by a single family, the House of Saud. And while Saud-based foundations may be the conduit through which Wahhabism is organized, funded indirectly, is most certainly is done at the behest of Riyadh in a process underwritten by Washington. A tool, not an ideology. Wahhabism was created and used as a political tool as early as the 1700s. It served as the cornerstone of Saudi Arabia's founding. Conveniently, Wahhabism, since its inception, was intolerant to outsiders. To the Saudis seeking political power through conquest, this intolerance was easily translated into the use of violence against tribes and neighboring states that did not submit to Saudi power. So you see what's going on right now? All right, I will continue on here. The British would harness this political tool further in its contest of power with the Ottoman Empire. It encouraged and cultivated extremist ideologies like Wahhabism before and after the fall of the Ottoman Empire. After the World Wars, British and Americans would ally themselves with nations like Saudi Arabia and begin exporting Wahhabi indoctrination worldwide. Can we say God bless the New World Order? Put your right hand to your heart, please. Prince Mohammed bin Salman's admission of this gives further insight into Washington's use of extremists in Syria in the late 1970s and early 1980s, as well as U.S.-supported militants in Afghanistan aimed at dislodging the Soviet presence there. What is most reveals precisely how terrorism as a geopolitical tool is being used post-Cold War today and who is using it. Mosques funded by Saudi Arabia and other Persian states well beyond the Middle East, including Europe and Asia. Right. Served as an indoctrination and recruitment center for the U.S.'s allies' various proxy wars and destabilization efforts around the globe. Do you see what's going on right now, folks? It's all one big tyrannical family. Yes. And it goes here, Wahhabism is honed. How Wahhabism is honed? Foreign fighters recruited from around the globe to fight in Syria's ongoing conflict have been drawn primarily from this Saudi-funded and directed Wahhabi network. Mosques and madrasas operate in North America and Europe do so with full knowledge and cooperation of Western security and intelligence services. The recruitment, deployment, and homecoming of Wahhabi indoctrinated mercenaries across the West has been admitted even across the Western media. Danish media organization, the local DK, exposed one such center in Denmark. The report in an article titled "Danish Mosque Doubles Down on ISIS Support" would describe as open support for designated terrorist organizations, especially so-called Islamic State. ISIS, remember I've been saying this for all these years? ISIS is New World Order funded. Oh, I'm not the only one that's bringing it to light, correct? The article would state, we want the Islamic State to come out on top. We want the Islamic State in the world, the mosque chairman Osama El-Sadeh said in the DR program. El-Sadeh also said that he views Denmark's participation in the U.S.-led battle against Syria as a direct affront not only to his mosque but to all Muslims. The war is against Islam, he said. The same supposed mosque based in Denmark, despite openly admitted in support of terrorism, would not be immediately shut down and its leadership arrested as one would expect. Instead, the Danish government immediately worked with the mosque to merely manage the process. How sweet it is to be choosers like you. Okay, so I'll continue on here. Der Spiegel's article, Community Response, the Danish answer to radical jihad, would report Commissioner Ozalev that he is proud of what they have thus far achieved, though he never forgets to praise his people and others involved in the program. He is particularly effusive when speaking of one man, a bearded Salafist who is head of the Gurmajiv Mosque in Aradas, where many of the young men who left Aradas to join the war in Syria were regulars. Its leader is a man named Osama El-Sadeh. These two men have joined forces in a project that is seek to find answers to questions they are plaguing the entire continent of Europe. What can be done about radical returnees from Syria? What measures are available to counter the terror which once again seems to be threatening the West closer to home? Astonishingly, the Western media has admitted to a multitude of such mosques, openly recruiting men across the West to fight as mercenaries in Syria under the banner of Al-Qaeda and its various subsidiaries and spin-offs before returning home and posing a security threat to Western populations. Ooh, man, you know what? I'm not going to repeat myself. It's self-explanatory. All right, so I'm going to continue on here. Rather than dismantling the network of eliminating the threat, the West has intentionally let it to grow, creating social-political divisions within the Western nations. Increasing racism, bigotry, and xenophobia helps continue justifying the West wars abroad while justifying a growing police state at home. Okay, so anyone out there is protesting against ISIS and ISIL and Islamic State and all that, Wahhabism, they can't use the race card or xenophobia card anymore because you know why? Because, like I said, it's all part of the One World Order family. Okay, so just look for this yourselves. And I know I have issues right now posting it on my pages, but just look it up, watching it, and read it Terror Enterprise from Land Destroyer Report or landdestroyer.blogspot.com. I will continue on here. The cover-up. The UK Independent in its article, Saudi Arabia boosting extremism in Europe, says former ambassador would admit Saudi Arabia have been funding mosques throughout Europe that have become a hotbed of extremism. The former British ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Sir William Patey, has said. However, the article, and many like it, intentionally deflects away from the larger implications of Saudi funding and the use of these so-called mosques as indoctrinating and recruitment centers, feeding militants funded and armed by the U.S., Europe, Saudi Arabia, and its Arab partners into conflict around the globe. The Western media and politicians, as well as Saudi representatives themselves, have attempted to claim Riyadh either doesn't fully control this network and do not realize this network's central role in driving global terrorism. Such excuses are, however, even at face value, absurd. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia uses Wahhabi networks to fill the rank and file of militant groups fighting around the globe is blatant. Fighters accidentally recruited in Saudi-funded mosques across Europe, in the Middle East, and Asia form militant groups armed, funded, trained, and otherwise supported by the U.S., Europe, and their Middle Eastern allies, including Saudi Arabia. In the relation to Syria in particular, veteran journalist Seymour Hersh, even as early as 2007 in his article, "The Redirection is the Administration's New Policy, Benefiting Our Enemies is the War on Terrorism," that's a question, would expose this process in action as it led up to the 2011 Syria war was already underway. Ain't that nice, huh? Absolutely. All the world's a stage. The article would state, to undermine Iran, which is predominantly Shiite, the Bush administration has decided, in effect, to reconfigure its priorities in the Middle East. In Lebanon, the administration has cooperated with Saudi Arabia's government, which is Sunni, in Palestine operations that are intended to weaken Hezbollah. It isn't because they claim that Hezbollah was started by the Israeli intelligence. Oh, how dare you say you're being anti-Semitic? No, it's just articles that I read, alright? So, you make your own decisions. The Shiite organization is backed by Iran. The U.S. has also taken part in the Palestine operations aimed at Iran and its ally Syria. A byproduct of these activities has been bolstering of Sunni extremist groups that espouse a militant vision of Islam and are hostile to America and sympathetic to Al-Qaeda. The article would also point out that this time U.S. government consultant told me Bandar and other Saudis have assured the White House that they will keep a very close eye on the religious fundamentalists. Their message to us was, we've created this movement and we control it. We can't control it. It is not we don't want the Salafists to throw bombs. It's who they want them. It's who they throw them at. Hezbollah, Muqtada, Al-Assad, Iran, and at the Syrians if they continue to work with Hezbollah in Iran. Let's see, cloak and dagger propaganda. We're the good guy badge, even though we're scumbags, but we're the good guys. You trust us. Thus, there is nothing at all accidental or unintended about Washington's and Riyadh's creation and use of these networks. Other tactics have been used as well to prevent directly addressing this decades-long effort. The use of multiculturalism versus virulent racism, bigotry, and xenophobia have created a false debate that transforms what is a joint Western Arab multinational sponsorship of terrorism into petty and highly divisive wedge issues. Controlled opposition on both sides of the resulting debate intentionally direct public discourse away from questions surrounding the inception and the utilization of Wahhabism by both Saudi Arabia and its Arab allies, as well as the West itself. Birds of a feather flock together. This is why I don't go crazy on the xenophobia propaganda or all this. People trying to blame Muslims for this, that. Like everyone who's a chop says we're all Muslims. Come on, you gotta look at the bigger picture. Look, even al-Assad and the late Omar Gaddafi, okay, they were Muslims by faith, but they were against Sharia law or radical Islam. They condemned that with the passion because look, a lot of these guys aren't stupid. They know the history of what these groups are about, but the people who watch the idiot tube and sound like parents without doing their own homework, that's what you get. Or who let the cows out, right? Moo! Don't get involved of the herd conformity. It will bite you in the rear end when you least expect it. Or the Orwellian tyrannical echo chamber. So, I will continue on here. The U.S.-Saudi global terror pipeline. From Saudi-funded measures, indoctrinating, radicalizing, and recurring militants, prospective fighters are then moved towards threat from theaters of operation. U.S.-Saudi sponsored extremism drawn from China's Uyghur population and China's western province of Xinjiang have been moving across Southeast Asia before reaching Turkey, where they stage, are trained, and armed before being sent to fight Damascus troops in Syria. While currently, the primary task of the U.S.-Saudi terror pipeline has been feed to the proxy war with the Saudi Arabia. U.S.-Saudi sponsored Wahhabi indoctrination, radicalization, and recruitment is also localized, while Uyghur extremists are being sent to Syria. Others are recruited and arrayed within China itself. See what's going on? They're trying to spread that Wahhabism propaganda. All right, so going here across Southeast Asia, Saudi funding has found its way into militants fighting under the banner of ISIS in the Philippines. There are legitimate concerns that the U.S. Saudi-funded network has tried to work its way into Thailand and exploit separatist fighting in the Deep South. In neighboring Myanmar, the U.S. helped place the current regime headed by the state councilor Aung San Suu Kyi into power. Her ultra-nationalist and viciously racist supporters have waged war of violent genocide against the nation's Rohingya minority. That's in Myanmar, of course. Simultaneously, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia have created a Rohingya militant group led by At-Ullah, raised and educated in Saudi Arabia. At-Ullah backstory is nebulous. His leadership may be similar to ISIS Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, a figure head of an organization ultimately run by the Riyadh in Washington. The use of terrorists has served a variety of objectives. For Syria, it is regime change. In China, agitation and possible balkanization along the nature's frontiers. In Southeast Asia, attempts to divide and weaken nations. Washington is attempting to install client regime in or in nations like Myanmar, in which the U.S. requires a client regime to remain obedient, and for the Philippines in particular, a means to retain a U.S. military presence on Philippine soil. Yep. So like this, like the whole jack-o'-lantern masquerading extravaganza. You know, like, hey, wolves in sheep clothing. I could go on, jack-lanterns, etc. Exposing and ending Washington's radar terror enterprise. The U.S. sees Wahhabism as a useful geopolitical tool, and it's honed and used for decades already. While it and its Western allies feigned ignorance to its inception and feigned impotence to stop it. They continue to invest in both its continued operation and continued reinvention. And while Wahhabism may have assisted Saudi Arabia in its founding and expansion as a powerful regional player, its sponsorship of these networks today is unsustainable and quickly becoming a liability. The U.S., as it has proven with many other former allies and proxies, will continue to use Saudi Arabia's Wahhabi construct until both Wahhabism and Saudi Arabia itself are no more. While it's still too early to tell, Saudi Arabia has plenty of incentives to transform a long-feigned interest in exposing and dismantling these networks into real action. For the public, sharing the petty political wedge issues used by the West to protect its multinational sponsor network of indoctrination, radicalization, and recruitment is essential to enlisting the public in exposing both Saudi Arabia and the West's role in constructing and perpetuating it. Like I said, all the world's a stage, right? Absolutely. So all we got to tell you this, my friends, how deep does the rabbit hole go? Very deep, a lot more than I know, so I'll be very frank. But one of the areas is a form of proxy wars, is imperialism, which I've been like harping this for a good period of time on my shows. And I find it very disturbing, even coming from Ron Paul, to bring our troops home. No more empires. Go back to the republic. And you know what? The people in the United States, we got to denounce the United States of America as a federal corporation. 1871 Reconstruction Act. Okay, so you should look at that as well. That's how I see it. We got to get out of everything to the World Bank. We got to say, you know what? We don't need Saudi Arabia. We don't need to tell everyone what to do. I'm my own individual. I don't want the state telling me how to wipe my rear end. So I don't like imperialism as a whole. It's unacceptable, and I condemn it. And I don't care if you like it or not, or how much money you make it for the military-industrial complex. All blood is on your hands for these contributions. And even people have to pay our taxes. I could be part of that guilt myself, but instead of crying about it, taking action, letting people know we got the right to do what we need peacefully and emulate and not use these conscripted, indoctrinating actions on other nations. Because you know what? They can do it. They can do it in your own backyard, and you go, "What have I done wrong? Well, I have nothing to hide." So right there, blowback can happen anytime. So hopefully, people out there pay attention, wake up, and say no more aid to Saudi Arabia. Let's end the wars. Stop sponsoring, financially sponsor them through, especially what's going on in Yemen and everywhere else in the world. Wahhabism is nothing more than a monumental deception. So I will continue on here. I read this a couple of days ago. It was part of my rant earlier about gun control and just insane people and all that. Well, this one came out a couple of days ago. I got it from Bob Livingston's Alerts, published by the Personal Liberty Group. It's by a gentleman who's been doing this for a long time named Bob Livingston, and he got some great work. Just go, just check it out. Go to boblivingstonletter.com, and you'd be surprised. Subscribe to him and all that. And he's not. It's really hard for people to. He says it's really hard for them to reach, but definitely check it out. Got some great articles from multiple talented writers. And it says this one here, he wrote, "This is the next tactic to disarm us." It says here, "Authoritarianism or criminal government can never feel free from fear for as long as millions of people own guns. Hence, the long-term effort to disarm us. Almost the national politicians want America completely disarmed, even if few admit it. Though they have all done all possible to impress upon the public mind that private firearm possession for any reason is un-American and is not in the public interest because guns are dangerous. Their debate is twisted nonsense, but people believe it." Yeah, I hear this a lot too. Now, you're talking to a guy, even though what happened, perfect event that happened in Parkland, Florida, or the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. And what's funny about Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, she wasn't some saint. Folks, do your homework on these people, man. She was a shyster as well. And I will continue on here. The politicians realized that mass force confiscation will not work. It would result in the deaths of thousands of federal agents if they could find enough of them to attempt such a thing, nor have efforts at soft confiscation, requiring self-reporting and voluntary surrender of arms and accessories suddenly deemed illegal, been anything more than marginally successful in recent years. The truth is, the local sheriffs, rank and file police, and military members are large pro-gun, and their families and friends are as well. But except for Sheriff Scott Israel, who is not my sheriff of Broward County, is nothing more than a federalized Uncle Tom. He's just an example. Okay. Yeah, there's a train may be coming, I think. Not really. Yes, it is. It looks like his train is coming. And I'll be right back and continue on. Stay tuned. Okay, we'll see what's happening here. I'll continue on. As it says here. Ooh, looks like the train's coming out. Let's find out here. Not really. Okay, looks like people are driving around. It says here. Oh, sorry about that. I got a little bit lost there. For the most part, they would be loath to join federal agents in forced confiscation programs, though, as we saw in the Katrina aftermath, there are mindless drones who will file confiscation orders without question. Yeah, and I think a lot of individuals should be charged for treason, including Ray Nagin and former police chief Riley from New Orleans. All right, just to let you folks know about that. And hopefully people, if he hears it, who cares? So, and it says here, but most were likely to join citizens in resisting such efforts. The result would be a bloody mess. So the elites have employed the propaganda machine to great effect. Vast swaths of ignorant people have swallowed the notion that certain weapons, based only on their appearance, form, and function, are inherently more dangerous than others. Other anti-gun propaganda is used in pushing for the fixed NCIS bill, which is a bill ostensibly designed to make it a law that government agencies must abide by the law, but will encourage governments to place people into the system over silly things like unpaid parking tickets, and for banning people on a terror watch list from possessing guns. Both these laws abuse notion of due process and would work to unlawfully disarm people based on government error, innuendo, and false charges. Yes, assumption, post-fact propaganda, post-factual world, right? Bizarro world, to be exact. The topic of mental illness has jumped front and center in the gun debate in recent days. In the wake of Valentine's Day massacre at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School in Parkland, Florida, even well-meaning conservatives have fallen prey to this trap and are advocating for laws to remove guns from people without due process under the so-called red flag laws, which we have one in Florida. Thank you, flip-flopper Scott, for being a tyrannical bend-over Bob. And all you lackeys, including Florida Senator Gary Farmer Jr. I'm not afraid to call you folks out. Now I'm in Fort Lauderdale, so please come and meet me. We'll talk about this if you dare. A bill has been introduced to provide federal incentives, i.e. federal dollars, to encourage states to confiscate guns for the most sophisticated of reasons. So-called conservative lawmakers have signed on. Bunch of her conformists, right? Moo. The NRA has fooled millions of people into believing it will look out for their Second Amendment rights, has signaled a willingness to support them. That's what happens when you don't go by your bylaws to the executive members of the National Rifle Association. Look at Article 2 one more time, and they can refute me for all I care. Mental illness is a nebulous and malleable term as assault weapon. Even psychiatrists admit that the classification of mental illness often relies on subjective criteria and that diagnosis for mental health conditions never rely on brain scans and blood tests. Concludes that mental illness stem from observed behavior, and any behavior that seems outside what is accepted as normal at the moment can be later be labeled abnormal. Therefore, a mental illness on a whim. For several years, push has been underway to label religious adherents as mentally ill. In 2006, biologist Richard Dawkins published his book, The God Delusion, in which he characterized belief in God as delusional. Dawkins cites the definition of an illusion as a persistent false belief held in the face of a strong contradictory evidence, especially as a synonym of a psychiatric disorder. In 2013, Kathleen Taylor, neurologist at Oxford University, said in interviews that recent developments suggest that we will soon be able to treat religious fundamentalism and other forms of ideological beliefs potentially harmful to our society as a form of mental illness. She maintains that religious fundamentalism may be one day be treatable and that religious people will be one day be able to be cured. Taylor admits that the scope of what could end up being labeled fundamentalist is expansive. She continued, I'm not just talking about obvious candidates like radical Islam or some more extreme cults. I'm talking about things like a belief that it is okay to beat your children. These beliefs are very harmful but are not normally categorized as mental illness. In many ways, that could be a very positive thing because there is no doubt beliefs in our society that do a heck of a lot of damage, that really do a lot of harm. So you see these two charlatans out there going to try to tell us what to believe in. Ain't that dandy? So you're not an individual, you are a number in their eyes. Later, journal Neuropsychology released a study that purported to show that religious fundamentalists are brain damaged. It is claimed its research determined that religious fundamentalism is in part the result of a functional impairment in a brain region known as the prefrontal cortex. There are millions of gun owners in America who consider themselves Christians. Now we have atheists in place of influence and power detaining ad hack that Christianity is a mental disorder. And that can and should be cured. The day is soon coming where a person's Christianity will get him labeled as mentally defective and therefore ineligible to possess weapons. The gun control problem is the mind control problem. The authorities know full well what they, with all their high-tech weapons, cannot subdue a determined people with private arms. Therefore, they will use all matter of spurious persuasion to get you to give up your arms and to exert hostility towards others who won't. Same old divide and conquer. Be careful what you wish for. And I like to tell this to all those individuals, including some of the commissioners in the city of Fort Lauderdale and Mayor Dean Trantillis. Be careful what you wish for, because it could bite you in the rear end when least expected. To all those people parading that we need tougher laws, well, how come the laws in the books that already existed have failed? I tell everyone out there, don't be a hurricanformist. Be a maverick. True freedom-minded individuals that can think for themselves. You know why? Because if you trust the government, leave all your eggs in one basket, it will blow back in your faces when least expected. So you know why? I always say, piss on your Orwellian echo chamber. Because I am no Uncle Tom to you, your lackeys, and even your scumbag grandparents that supports tyranny. And I say that symbolically. Underdog only works in cartoons, but not the real world. Plain and simple. Deep down inside, you know I'm right. And that is it. I thank everyone for listening, but feel free to download and share throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or want to send me something that's interesting you may want to check out, whatever you do, feel free to address their correspondences with decorum. You keep me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Minds.com, FutureNet.club, FreedomsNetwork.com. I got Gab.ai, and you could hit me on what a few others. I guess that's all in my mind. So you can hit me at patreon.com /LokiLuck3 if you want to be a patron. Got nothing, but that's okay. But you can hit me there as well. In addition, you can email me at LokiLuck3@gmail.com, or to encrypted ones that have a Proton Mail account, LokiLuck03@ProtonMail.com. Woo! Okay, my friends, that's all for now. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is helpful for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love. May your guardian spirits be with you.